All right. All right. Welcome, YouTube folks. Today, we are going to be talking about how to read and understand a preliminary title report. And we're going to just work our way through this report, which I have up on the screen for those of you live in the room. So, first of all, does everybody know what a preliminary title report is? Yeah, no. Ownership, yes. So remember that all house sits on, what does house sit on? Land. And so what has happened is the government has divided all of the land in the land into line, like everything is lined off, right? So when you are representing a buyer or a seller, the house that sits on the land is divided off from other houses. We call those divisions lots. So when you look at a listing on the MLS, you're going to see not just the square footage of the house, but also the square footage of the land, the lot, right? So sometimes you'll see in the MLS, this home has half an acre or an acre of land. So the preliminary title report is a report about the lot and the land together. That whole division that is created by the government for different and by private people for different property. Property is land and improvement on the land. The improvement is the house or the condo or whatever is built. Could be a multi-unit residential housing complex. That's the improvement. If you have a duplex, how many lots are on the how many lots does a duplex sit on? No, one. If you have a duet, which is two houses separated by a wall, how many lots do they sit on? Two, because the house wall in the middle divides the lots, right? Can two, can the two, can the, if you have a duplex, you typically will have one owner. If you have a duet, you'll have two owners, right? If you have a single owner, that does not mean an individual necessarily. It just means one ownership entity. Okay, does that all make sense? If I own a house, we can look up in the tax record in the MLX, we can see who the owner is. Could be a company, could be a nonprofit, could be government, and could be an individual, whether the individual holds it in a trust or not. So what does Janet, you were on the right track. What does the preliminary title do for us? What do we use it for? Why do we care? Why do we care? What do we care? Why do we care about looking at this? Problems. It'll tell us problems. Okay. A little bit of the history, but not particularly, no. So the whole point of a title report is to reflect who owns this lot with its improvements on it, who owns it, title. The word title is an ownership, who owns it, and also conditions and circumstances impacting that ownership. So not history. What are some typical things that impact ownership of land and improvement on it? Sorry?
Encroachment.
Encroachments. What are encroachments?
It could be like have some. It's like a pigeoning. No, that's fine.
Encroachment
Could be like your garage.
Yes, that's right. Your building crosses that imaginary line between a building, a structure, maybe just the roof, overhangs over the imaginary line separating it from the neighbor. Yeah, that's an encroachment. Also easements, a right of somebody else to walk or traverse the lot, or your right to go on other people's, okay?
Next common pathway.
Yeah, pathway, yeah. What's another major thing that impacts ownership of land? Lien, what's a lien?
So somebody's rights against you.
Lenders.
I went for a complete 2 hours class on this one, where they were selling.
Okay, what's a lien? No. A lien is more general. A lien is a financial obligation on the property by anyone for anything. Now, Archana mentioned a very common one, tax lien. Yes, we'll get to that later. But yeah, liens are prioritized at who gets paid first. So let's suppose the owner of the property, the land and the property on it, goes into bankruptcy, and the bankruptcy court says, okay, we're going to sell this, or maybe it's a foreclosure, and the bank forecloses and they're going to sell it. The lien holders, the people who have a financial right against the property, they get prioritized. Who comes first, Archana? Government, and primarily tax authority. What's another very common type of lien? Yes, and what's a mechanic's lien? Right. Somebody who does work on your house and doesn't get paid can put what they call a mechanic's lien against the title, against the lot and the improvement on it, saying, you know, you can't sell this unless you pay me. Or when you do sell it, I get paid the amount that I'm putting on as a lien. You're a contractor, you're a person who did work. Right. The number one lien that we see most of the time is a mortgage loan. Right. And we distinguish between voluntary and involuntary liens, right? A mortgage loan is voluntary. You choose to encumber, the verb is encumber, the property with a mortgage loan so that you can finance the purchase. But a mechanic's lien is involuntary. They forked the lien on you because you didn't pay. That was not your choice. Not your choice to have them put the lien on. So we are examining the title report for all these things. We want to verify ownership. We want to find out what the seller owes and to whom and for what. And we want to find out if there are any encroachments or easements or other deed restrictions, items that limit and impact ownership. That's what a title report is. Now, this is very different than a home inspection, right? This has nothing to do with that. This is very different than a pest inspection. It's very different than an appraisal. It's very different than any other kind of investigation you might do, studying the neighborhood. If you're thinking of buying a home or your buyer is looking at buying, they want to know that there's no funky business going on with the ownership of the lot and the improvement on it, the house, right? So that they can go through knowing everything is going to be clean. If a property is delivered with cleanness on the title, we call that clear title. Clear title. If there is a problem with the ownership, what do we call that? A cloud on title. A problem with the ownership is called a cloud on title. All right. So with all of that introduction, I'm going to walk you through how to read this report, how to understand it. Okay, are you ready? All right. So first page is an introductory page. Check to verify that the property address matches what you think it should be. Cover page. Then they give you a sort of like an intro page. Then after that, we get to the start of the report. The most important thing that you should look at, apart from verifying the address is right, is the effective date. The effective date is when the research was done about the property, about the lot with the improvement. That's when they did. This is the legal date of this report. Yes, sir.
Can you go to the top and let us know, who requests the title report and who's it addressed to?
It is requested. Okay, so when you open an escrow for a transaction, it automatically gets generated by the escrow company. Escrow in Northern California, escrow and title are together, right? So it's the company you work with for escrow orders it with their title company. If you are a listing agent and you're representing a seller, you might order it in advance to put it in your disclosure package. But very rarely does a buyer's agent have to order it as a separate action item because the escrow will do it automatically once escrow is opened. Many sellers will do it in advance though, because they want to put it in their disclosure package. Did that answer your question?
No, no,
Yeah.
the title with the address there. Keller Williams.
Yeah, that's my office. I was representing the seller. Yeah, so the name of the title company, their location, this changes all the time, right? The left-hand side will normally be the address of the ordering entity. And the right-hand side will be the name of the escrow officer, their email, and the file number for the account. Okay. When you open escrow for a buyer or seller, the file number is called the escrow number, is very important because that's how the escrow company knows what property you're talking about. So when you're talking to escrow, whether you're a seller or buyer, it's always good to reference by the escrow number as well as the property address as an extra step of ensuring, yeah, an extra reference number. Okay, so
One question.
yeah.
You said effective date.
Yeah, the effective date is where I was just going, the top of the first page of the actual report. Yeah. Yes.
So let's today,
Yeah.
after 1 month, start the listing.
Yeah.
Passes like that. In between something happened then, but
So if I'm a listing agent, property information is usually pretty stable during a listing period. So you don't normally need a new prelim once you have one if you're in a listing property, unless there's an ownership change or a lien change while you're in escrow or on the market. Normally, the encroachments and easements aren't changing so fast. So yeah, so at the close of escrow, a brand new report will be issued for the buyer. But when you go on the market as a seller, you only need to get it once. In 99.9% of the time, you get it once, you're fine. However, if you are looking as a buyer's agent and the report is 2 years old, then that's no good, right? It should be within a reasonable amount of time from when the property started being marketing. So if the property goes on the market today and you go to the listing report and the prelim is 3 months old, you're probably fine. But if the prelim is 6 months old, I call the listing agent and say, hey, this prelim is 6 months old, right? Are you getting a new one? And usually they say, yeah, we're just waiting for it, right? Usually. And if not, you have to wait till you get into contract. Okay. Effective date. Yeah, the effective date for this one is September 1st, 2020 at 7:30 a.m. I just pulled this one up from my history. This is old. It's not relevant current information at all. All right, so let's keep going. Well, I'd say within 3 months of when the listing shows up on the MLS. Once it gets older than that, there's a question of what did the seller might have done some financial activity. So you want to make sure it's reasonably accurate. Ownership might have changed in preparation for going on the market. That happens a lot, by the way. You get a report saying the owner is Jane Smith, but it's a probate. Jane Smith is dead. So you want to ask escrow, if you're a buyer's agent, you want to ask the listing agent, who is the offer to be made out to? The estate of Jane Smith or Bill Smith executor, or how do they want to refer to the person who's actually managing the sale? So you'll see that a lot where the preliminary report will have an inaccurate reflection of ownership because of something like that. All right, so the effective date important. Then you will see this nature and name of the owner, okay? So in this example, number 1, it says a fee. We see a fee or a fee simple for any individual ownership where it's just one person, okay? You might see different verbiage if it's a couple or if it is any kind of other more complicated ownership structure, okay? Number 2, vesting. Okay, so vesting is very important. This is usually who you're putting as the seller's name on the offer. So before we write an offer for a buyer, we verify with the seller's agent, is the name on the title report who the offer should be addressed to, who the seller is. Sometimes they'll tell you in advance. Sometimes it'll be in the offer detail instructions from the listing agent. Please address so-and-so as the seller. Do whatever the seller's agent tells you, right? If you're a listing agent and there is going to be a discrepancy, you tell the buyers what to do.
Why will there be a discrepancy?
Let's suppose this lady was passed. Then you have an executor. Let's suppose that after this report was issued, she transferred half the interest to her brother-in-law and they haven't done a new prelim yet. There's lots of reasons why. Let's suppose it's a mistake and they're trying to get it corrected and they have to provide all kinds of proof. There are lots of reasons why the ownership listed on the public record and the ownership listed on the prelim might not be accurate. So if you're a buyer's agent, your due diligence is to call the listing agent. If you're a listing agent, you're doing your due diligence even before you go on the market because you need to sign a listing agreement with the correct seller. So you'll have sorted this out as a listing agent so that you're representing the right entity when you're signing your agreement with your seller. All right. In this case, she is the trustee of her living trust that she did 8 years earlier in 2012. Okay, so she is a trustee. Why do we care? Because the legal disclosure obligations are different for trustees than they are for people who don't have a trust. Now, Antonta is an individual. She's a live human being. When you meet with her, you know, you have to tell her how to fill out her disclosure documents as a seller, right? So if she's a trustee, they're different. Now, you guys, I just told you earlier about the class we have tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock on disclosures. This might come up. What disclosures are required for the trustee of their own living trust? What requirements are there for the trustee of somebody else's living trust? What is the disclosure requirements as an individual? That's the kind of decisions you need to make. And the good news is there's all kinds of resources to help you know what to do when you're representing a seller. But as a buyer's agent, your main concern is to make sure that the right name is on your offer paperwork. Okay. And that is, you're going to get a good hint of it here, and it may be perfectly accurate, but you should always check with the agent for the seller. Okay. There's lots of different things that can show up here. And sometimes it's very simple, and sometimes you have to ask questions. All right. Then what they do is they tell you what land they're talking about. Remember, all property consists of a land on the earth and the improvement upon the land, sometimes multiple improvements upon the land, if there's more than one building, right? So the land referred to in this report is described as follows. See Exhibit A. Exhibit A comes right next. Okay, and what they're saying here is the land referred to below is situated in the city of Hayward, county of Alameda, state of California, and described as follows. Lot 2, tract 3492, filed May 3rd, 1973, with a link to the map, which it doesn't want to open in this view. That's too bad. Let me see if I can download it and open it in this view. One sec, guys. Sorry, one sec. Let's see. Okay, now I'm in a different modality. Let's see if I can click on the link. Okay, can the link work now? Nope, still doesn't want to work. Sorry. Anyway, it opens a map, and I can probably show it to you at the bottom of the report as well. All the modern reports have clickable links. Here's that map. It's at the bottom as well on most of these reports. Sorry, I gotta find it. I keep going past it, right? Sorry?
Control click.
Control what? Flick?
The control button, click on the link. Control button and then click on the link. Press the control button and click on the link. URL.
Oh shoot, sorry. Control link.
And control and click on the link.
Okay, let's try that. I don't think that's gonna work. I think it's a problem with the PDF copy.
The Lincoln Road with that.
If it's got the blue, it should be there. Sorry. Okay, let's try. Anyway, when you get these, they should be clickable. And we made us go to another one. And when you click these links, it should take you. So control and click link. I don't think this is going to work. Does this one work? No, it doesn't work. All right, it doesn't matter. So you can look at the map and see what it looks like on the map. We'll see it further below. All right, so after they've identified the land physically in space, sometimes they have a whole description. And they've told you who the owner is. Sorry, and they tell you who the owner is on the first page. You get to what we call exceptions. These are the encroachments, easements, and liens against the property and deed restrictions against the property. It's a list. Now, as Archana pointed out before, the very first thing you're going to see are property taxes. Usually the number 1 and the number 2. The number 1 are property taxes that are going to be due but aren't due yet for the next year. Okay. Number 2 are the dues, the current property taxes. So number 2 we should look at. It says the tax ID number, which is the assessor parcel number, APN. Whenever you write an offer, you put the APN in your offer paperwork, right? So it's identified here, and it's another clickable link that isn't working on this particular one. But look what it says here. First installment, 1796.32, open. What does open mean? Not paid yet. Not paid yet. And the second installment, 1796.32, also open. Okay, so it depends on the time of year. I did a class on property taxes a little while ago. Property taxes are due twice a year, right? So it depends on the time of year whether they're open or whether they're showing amounts paid. This 7 exemption, all homeowners qualify for their principal residence for $7,000 off the top of the evaluation of the value of the property. So it's showing $7,000 for that. And then notice what it looks like underneath. The land is valued at $82,585, the improvement at $192,700. They're getting that straight from the public record. That has nothing to do with the value of the property in the marketplace. It's what the tax authority is basing its taxes on for county property taxes. So anyway, the seller is responsible for all of these property taxes up to and including the date of the closing of the sale. Not when they put it on the market, not the end of the year, not the end of the tax year. The day that it closes escrow is the last day that the seller is responsible for their taxes, which means we have something called proration. Proration, what means is when you close escrow and you get all the closing paperwork, or when you're looking at the net sheet, you will see an allocation. Here's how much the seller pays up to the day of closing, and everything else will be buyer obligation after the closing. Okay. All right. It says right here, prior to close of escrow, please contact the assessor's office to determine all amounts owing, including delinquencies. So that's a responsibility of escrow, not you. Okay. Now, if I'm a good listing agent, right, I'm going to ask escrow about this and make sure, especially if I see something funny here, if I see penalties and stuff, the seller is responsible. If you ever see any penalties in around this area, who's responsible? The seller. The seller has to clear those leads. He has to. It come out of his proceeds. It comes out of his proceeds at the closing. He can't avoid it. Now, there is a problem if he owes more than what he's going to get. If you fear that he's going to owe more than he's going to you get on the phone with the listing agent right away, or as a listing agent, you have the conversation right away. Are you, Mr. Seller, if you're a listing agent, Mr. Seller, you prepared to bring money to the table because you're going to be short at the end of the day because you owe $50,000 in back taxes? Or, Mr. Buyer, we need to verify that the seller has enough money at the end of the day. They're not going to walk away with any money. We want to make sure that they have enough money to pay these extra charges because it's not on you, Mr. Buyer. The penalties that you might see. Okay.
What if he doesn't?
Then that's a short sale. And that's a conversation with the sellers, the seller would have with them before they went on the market. If they don't have any, remember, they're not out cash. It's out of the proceeds. So if they are going to be upside down, we call it upside down, and they don't have enough money to bring to the table, they shouldn't be selling the home. Or you get into a short sale situation, which is a whole different class. How do you represent a seller who doesn't have enough money? That's a whole conversation. All right. The lien number 3, the lien of supplemental or escape. We just talked about this. Potentially owing penalties on taxes. Okay, we were talking about easements. Here's an easement. The purpose, now easements are notoriously vague on prelims. It's not great. It would be better if they had to be very specific, but they are often very vague, and that raises all kinds of questions. If you are representing a seller, you want to ask your seller about it. You want to ask escrow for more detail. You want to understand exactly what's going on. If you are and then disclose it to the buyers. If you're a buyer's agent and there's nothing in the disclosures, you want to ask the listing agent for more information. So this one says, easement for the purpose shown below and rights incidental thereto as delineated or as offered for dedication on the map. And there's a link to the map. Public utilities northwesterly 6 feet. What the heck does that mean? If we look at the map further down, we might actually get to see it. Let's see if we can see it on the map. Sorry that the link isn't working, but that's okay. So we go down to the bottom. We should see the map. Here's the map. Okay. Sometimes these maps, they're called plat maps. Sometimes they show the easements, especially with single family homes. It's very hard to tell. So it's a condominium complex. These are all the units. They've even marked the map PIQ. What does PIQ stand for? Any guesses?
Floor to.
Property in question. Property in question. That means they're pointing to the unit of the person who owns the condo unit here. Or in a subdivision, it might be, when you see PIQ, they're making your job easier. They're telling you on this map called a plot map where it is. Now, what is hard to read here, and it doesn't help that it's upside down, is where the heck is this northwesterly 6 feet? So if it were me and I was representing the buyer, I would call escrow and say, the prelim says there's this easement for public utilities. Where is that? Show me on the plat map, and make them tell you. They will. That's part of their job. Okay. I would want to know if I was the buyer. All right. Number 5, covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Okay, whenever you see covenants, conditions, and restrictions, we are talking about an HOA. It may not be condos. It might be simply a planned unit development where they have a bunch of single family homes is behind a gate. They're all single family homes. That could be an HOA. Anywhere there's an HOA, you will have covenants, conditions, and restrictions, more commonly called, what do we call them? CC&Rs. CC&Rs. That's just the acronym, right? So why do they show up here? Why is there a reference to CC&Rs on a prelim?
Lien, right?
Huh?
Lien.
No, not usually leads. Restrictions, sometimes. That's if they haven't paid the HOA fees, which would show up as a separate lien.
Yeah.
What we're talking about here is restrictions. Because when you buy an HOA, there's all kinds of rules. You're not allowed to put certain stuff on your balcony. You're not allowed to do car repairs in your parking space. You're not allowed to tear down walls. You're not allowed to put signs, make noises, all kinds of things. They're documented on the prelim because they are a limitation on your free and unfettered use of the land. Plus, you have to share space. You have to share a parking garage or a parking area or a walk path to get to the front gate, or maybe a swimming pool. All of it is encompassed under number 5 here. And there's a link, when it works, to the documents. Now, remember that these documents that are CC&Rs, they'll be in a good disclosure package as HOA documents. So you as the buyer's agent don't need to click to it from here. But you will look at it in your disclosure package. If you're a listing agent, you really, really, really want to order HOA docs before you go on the market, please. Not after. Darwin, you don't have an HOA, right? Where you're selling that property, or do you have an HOA? The one that they did the open houses for. Is there an HOA? Did you order the package in advance for the homeowner association?
Actually, you know, during the listing,
You did order it though.
yeah.
Okay.
It's not like before the.
No, but ideally it would have been better if you had it before. Because then you know what's going on with the HOA. I mean, Darwin, as a listing agent, wants to know. Buyers are going to ask, especially if there's a patio or a balcony with no fencing. They're going to want to know where can I use my back area here, or do I have any back area? Do I have exclusive right to use it, or can anyone walk on it? What parking space is mine? What are my rights around doing barbecuing on the balcony? What are my rights around doing all kinds of things? Yeah, so that's this.
Which is more severe?
I've never heard that question before. I would say they're all the same. Covenants, I mean, maybe there's a legal difference, but my point is you as a listing agent just need to know that the owner is subject to covenants, conditions, and restrictions of the HOA. All right, the next thing, the HOA fees that someone mentioned. There is a reference to it in this item here. And this reference simply says that the owner will be paying liens and charges to the HOA. Can the HOA, let's suppose somebody doesn't pay their fees every month. Can the HOA put a lien on the title? Absolutely. Can the HOA foreclose if the owner doesn't make good?
They can go for.
Absolutely. Do they have priority ahead of the tax department? Do they have priority against the first mortgage lender? No, they're last or third. They're after. Right? Maybe they're after mechanics liens too. All right, number 6. Okay, now a deed of trust. What is the more common way we talk about deed of trust? What is it? What is a deed of trust? The term we use, common parlance, is mortgage. We have mortgage companies. We don't have deed of trust companies. A mortgage and a deed of trust are the same thing. In California, the way the laws work, we call them deeds of trust legally. They don't call them mortgages. The actual piece of paper is a different legal instrument. It's a different legal thing than a deed of trust. Deed of trust and mortgages, but for our purpose, for realtors, it's the same thing. Okay. So we're not lawyers. It doesn't matter. If we were lawyers, we would know what the difference is. But we don't care for our purpose. We just need to know that on this particular property, there is a deed of trust. There is a mortgage that is registered against the property, and the name of the grantor, trustor rather, is the owner, according to the first page. So that's good. And the trustee is Fidelity National. Now, why is the trustee not the owner? Yes, the trustee is the person responsible. Okay, let's this very briefly. The trustor is the person who has the obligation. Okay. The trustee is the person managing the obligation. The beneficiary is the person who is going to get the obligation paid. It's going to be the person who benefits from the obligation. The bank usually, or mortgage company. In this case, Prospect Mortgage LLC, right? So what does that mean? Antonia Chiminanti, this lady, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, well. The owner in this property that was sold 5 years ago, okay? The owner of this property at that time, this lady, she is the obligator. She has an obligation to pay off a mortgage. The person managing that obligation is an organization called Fidelity National. That's why they're the trustee. They're the management. They're taking care of making sure stuff happens. And the person getting the money is this MERS people as a nominee for Prospect Mortgage. It's been outsourced, right? Okay, now the next thing you need to know here is that the mortgage was taken out on October 28, 2010, 10 years before this report was issued. So it's a 10-year-old mortgage, right? And the amount originally taken out was $135,000. That is not how much she owes. That's very important. The amount on the title report is the original indebtedness. It is not the current amount owed. So you're meeting with your seller and you see this, maybe you see it online on the profile page of the property, or you see it on this report in the disclosures, you're meeting with the seller and you ask the seller, how much do we know is owed now? Do you have a most recent statement you could share with me? How much is owed now? Why does the seller care? Why do we care? How much is owed now? Why do we care?
Well,
Or more specifically, the net sheet. You're going to be preparing a document for a seller showing how much money they're going to get at the end of the day. You need to put in a good amount for the mortgage, not the original amount. It's 10 years. Do you think she still owes 135,000? Not likely. All right, let's keep going. And there is a link here to the document that of the deed of trust document. All right, number 7. This is a nice and simple one. Any invalidity or defect in the title of the vestees in the event the trust referred to herein is invalid. This is a legal term. If the buyer is going to be have the home in trust, they need a trust certification. That's all. This is a very simple one. Now, just for converse, I'm going to show you another one which is a little more complicated. So let's find another one. Let's see if we can find a more complicated one. This is a nice and complicated one. Okay, and it's going to look very similar. They all have the same sort of standard thing, no matter what the company is. Okay, this is another condominium, but look at this one. The description of the land: parcel 1, parcel 2, parcel 3, parcel 4, parcel 5, parcel 6. Oh my God, we're going to go through that in a minute. And then look at all the exceptions here. Way more exceptions. There are, in this case, way more. Now, why? Because the condominium has a lot more stuff, and this one has a garbage lien. City of Richmond, it's actually a back tax, $174.86. This one's a lot more complicated. This one has a 50,000, has 2 loans on it, 217,900 and 50,000. I'm going very quickly, but these things can get much more complicated. But what I want to focus on with this one is, how do you describe the land? When you are dealing with a planned unit development or a condo, it's very important to understand what the parcels are. Okay, and in this prelim, you've got way more different 6 different parcels that are referenced in this particular ownership structure. So let's go through them and see if we can understand them briefly. The first thing is parcel 1, an undivided 1 out of 224th fee simple interest as tenant in common to lot 1 as shown on the map. Okay, now what the heck are they talking about here? Yes, they have 224 units. So you immediately know how many different ownerships there are inside the condo. What else is this telling us too? That they own 224th share of lot 1 in the map. So lot 1 is the map of the whole condo complex. Like we saw in that other map, it's the whole thing. This one actually specifies that they own, you have this owner owns 224th share. Whoa. But then there's all these exceptions. Oh, nope, you don't own the oil, gas, and other stuff underneath that lies more than 500 feet below the surface. And also, by the way, you don't own the units, except for your own.
Oil, gas, isn't it valid for regular home too?
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes no. Sometimes you own all the land underneath. Yeah. So there's all this detail exceptions. Parcel 2, unit number 192. So parcel 2 is their unit. Whenever you're selling a condo, the space between the walls is what the owner owns. They don't own the stuff in between the walls exclusively. They have their 224th share. And if there's 60 units, 1/60th Okay, that they own, because they own their little part of the building, yes. Yeah.
The first paragraph which you
Yeah.
marked, that says 500 feet underneath, so I came across one of the exhibit A yesterday, and I had a question on that. The person, Maria Palachi, owned the oil rights, which she signed in 1986. The
Yeah.
house was built in 1992. But she has the right to the oil and all that underneath 500 feet, right?
Yeah,
And they said that she can drill whenever she wanted. If there is oil and all that, she can go horizontally underneath and get it. And it could cause a damage to the property above it. So
who said that?
it's in the
In the prelim? Yeah, so don't you think your buyer wants to know that someone has a right to do horizontal drilling underneath the building? Yeah.
nothing has happened, right? Could that be possible? Means there are a lot of houses around there where I'm showing the house and all that. So
Is this a real concern? Is that your
Yes.
question?
Yeah.
So what should he do? That's an excellent question. So you're reading this thing in the prelim about somebody who apparently has this right from 1986 that could be destructive and damaging to the foundation. I mean, 500 feet is a long way down, but I don't know that I'd be comfortable if I owned a house or even a condo, knowing that somebody could drill 500 feet under. I don't know how I'd feel about that. What can he do? My thinking is refer her to a real estate attorney because we don't know. We can't conjecture if somebody in the future is going to try to use that right.
So you can just say that you should seek a advice from attorney,
Yeah,
and then she gonna freak out, you know.
and don't buy that property. I mean, would you? Would you buy a property with, I mean, how likely is it that someone's going to drill underneath a building? That's a judgment call. I'm not going to say to a buyer that you're wrong to have this concern, but I will say, let's research it. Let's get an expert to tell us. And who is an expert? A real estate attorney. We are not knowledgeable to say the likelihood of someone wanting to drill 500 feet under. Maybe she wants to talk to your client wants to talk to a structural engineer too. Will drilling 500 feet below hurt my property value? Not my property value, hurt my property's stability? That's a structural engineering question.
So based on that, you can negotiate the price.
Probably not. I mean, in my experience, no. But the buyer needs to understand what these things are. So it's very good. You saw that. Okay. Parcel 2. So parcel 1 was their share in the complex. Parcel 2 was the unit. What the heck is parcel 3? Okay. Parcel 3, certain exclusive use association property consisting of storage space. And it even tells you designated with the letter S and the number of the unit that it is associated with is an exclusive easement, therefore for the parcel 1 and 2 above. Okay, so what it's saying is, if you look at the map of the whole complex, lot 1 or or parcel 1 or parcel 2, which is the unit itself, that parcel 3 is areas on the map that are exclusive, specifically a storage space. So when the person buys this condo, or the seller selling this condo, they are selling a right to use a storage space that they share in ownership with all the other people. But nobody else gets to use that storage space. They can even put a lock on it. It's like an outdoor building, right? Maybe it's an outdoor building. Maybe it's in the hallway of an apartment. But it's not inside the walls. That's why it has to be designated separately. Number 4 is another one. Certain exclusive use of association property associated by a patio or a deck, as referenced on the map. Did you guys know that if you're a condo owner, you don't normally own your deck or your patio? You don't. It's exclusive use. It is owned by the community. Now, the plus of this is, let's suppose that the surface of the floor of your deck is failing and is all damaged. You don't have to pay to fix it. The HOA should pay to fix it. Getting them to fix it is another story. But you can tell a buyer. Let's suppose you're looking at a property that has a deck or a patio. Maybe it's a patio and 3 of the 7 tiles are missing, or the fence is broken or damaged. You can go to the buyer and say, this is an HOA responsibility. Here it is on the prelim. Okay. My buyer says, well, how long will it take the HOA to fix? go to an HOA meeting and demand it be fixed and then see this is a problem. If I'm a listing agent, it's a problem because I know how, you're going to have to tell your seller that, maybe they've tried to get the HOA fixed and they tell you a whole story show about how the HOA won't fix it. You have to disclose that. Now, all of a sudden, you have a negative thing against the property. A buyer doesn't want to buy it because the HOA won't fix the broken patio or the broken fencing.
But they have to, right? No,
Well, they have to. As an owner, you should be demanding they keep the property in good repair. And yes, and HOAs fix stuff all the time. I don't mean to badmouth HOAs. I mean, I've been in HOAs and they will fix stuff they're responsible for.
Can a owner force you not to pay the HOP?
Good luck. Try it. Sure. I don't know. I have no idea whether you can push the hand of the HOA by not paying your dues. I don't think so. But that's a different question. Parcel 5. So we've talked about 4 parcels already. Here is a certain assigned parking space. Notice it doesn't say exclusive use. So this is very important. It doesn't say exclusive use. It says assigned parking space. So that's unique to this HOA. A different HOA might have exclusive use parking space. This is really, really important. What if your client needs an accommodation because they're disabled? And if the parking spaces are assigned, the HOA has way more power to move the person's parking space to be closer to their unit than they would if they were exclusive use, where it's already mapped out who gets what spot. And then number 6, a whole bunch of easements for access, egress, and use, enjoyment, drainage, everything that they use the common areas for. People can walk, so that's all that is. So you see how this gets a little complicated, especially with condominiums. And even if it's a house, it isn't necessarily simple. Last thing I want to show you is one for a house. Let me find you a house one. I've got hundreds of them in here. Nope, they were both, that was a townhouse, but it was a condo building. Okay, here is another one that I did for another property. And this one is, again, very similar style, very similar information, very similar. This was a year earlier. This was for a single family house in, where's the house? In Vallejo. I represented the seller. Okay. And here's an interesting situation. It was in the name of Adam Bloom, a married man, is his sole and separate property. But his wife was very much involved in all the conversations, but only he had to sign the paperwork. See, that was and you verify this with your seller, and that's what I did with him. Okay, she was very much involved, but she was not a signatory to anything because it wasn't her property, it was his. See, married, sole and separate. Okay, still a fee though. All right, so this one is fairly simple. It actually shows you, here's the reference to the map, which I don't know. Oh, this one's going to work. And here's your map. The link works. And there's a whole, what is this? Here, this is all this stuff. This is a reference to the property tax report. Wow. Interesting. Solana County, that's what the link went to. All right, let's keep going. Where were we? All right, are we on the right one? Wait, now I don't know which one I'm on. Wrong one. I have to go back. All right. All right, property taxes. Okay, here you go. Here we go. Here we go. Here's the property taxes. The current ones are open, but look, said property has been declared tax defaulted for non-payment of delinquent taxes for 2016 and 2017. And they owe $171 and $172 for 2 amounts. So it's not a lot of money. Who has to pay this? And when? At the closing, in the closing. Yeah. So I would always call the escrow officer, okay, as a listing agent, and I would talk to my seller. Say, Mr. Seller, we got the prelim back. It's showing about $350 in unpaid property taxes from 2016 to 2017. Please call escrow. Make sure you understand how you're going to clean that up. It has to be paid as part of your closing. They will probably take it off of your proceeds. Then we've got unpaid city of municipal and unpaid charges for the city of Vallejo. Then there's no amounts there. And then you've got the easement, an easement, and then you've got CC&Rs. By the way, you can have CC&Rs with no HOA. You can have CC&Rs because of the developer when they built the building, and that's one of these, number 6. In 1943, when they built out the subdivision and put in most of the houses, they recorded covenants. You can't have most of them say things like you can't put park big vehicles on the lot. You can't put a new construction on outside the front of the house. You know, there's some limitations that are still legally in force and show up on these prelims, even if it's a house without an HOA. But because there's no HOA, it would take a very strong effort on behalf of all the neighbors to enforce it. But that's a legal question as well. Here's the loan, mortgage loan, and that's it on this one. So you can see they're all a little bit different. By the way, I didn't go through it before, but all of these things have a note section at the end, which just sort of summarizes and clarifies a few things and puts the name of the buyer if a buyer's been identified. And then you get, after the notes, you get wire fraud information, and then you get a privacy notice, and then you get the last thing on all these title reports is the actual policy coverage exclusions. So this is called a preliminary title report because it is not the title report. It is the preliminary one used in a transfer of property. And so they always put at the end of them all the exclusions. So if you get title insurance, all your buyers pay title insurance most of them pay title insurance. And if you have a loan, you get another policy of title insurance for the lender. This goes into what is accepted, what is not included in what are the exceptions from coverage. Okay, and you can read all this detail if you're really interested about things that aren't covered in and it also talks about liabilities, limitations of uncovered risk for different risks, what the limitation of coverages are, that like what the deductible is. There are deductibles, and it just goes into a little detail about the policy, and that's more or less it. And they all look the same. And then at the end, here's another one with the PIQ thing going on, telling you where the property is in the law, in the area. These are all single family homes. Okay. So anyway,
Q means like there's a
property in question. No, property in question. It's just a marker to tell you what lot number, what lot we're looking at. We're looking at this one. It's just an arrow. It's just a direction. PIQ stands for property in question.
that means there are some questions, but
No questions. It's just a term to mean, look here. Look here. That's all it means. Look here. No questions. It's just an old term that they use. I don't know why they use it. Okay. Any questions? We're more or less done. Thank you guys for being here. I hope this was helpful and instructive.
Yeah.
Look at a prelim. And I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you, YouTubers and people who are watching this as a link.
You know.